In terms of success, you're better off being good at one thing and combining that with a whole bunch of what I call leapfrog skills, complementary skill sets, than you are at being great at one thing. This is the biggest misconception with people that are trying to become more successful in their field, is they think that they actually need to learn more about their core competency or improve their skill set in that core competency. What they don't realize is that actually there's a state of diminishing returns at a relatively low level for most industry-specific knowledge. Because what you're actually trying to do when you work in an industry is, all you're trying to do is you're trying to solve your customers' problems. Basically, all customers have a relatively low level problem that needs to be solved. There's not that much information that they need or skill that they need to solve their problem to make them happy with whatever you're trying to serve them with. I'll give you an example from my career. I was a mediocre to just okay personal trainer. Like, admittedly, I was a mediocre to just okay personal trainer in terms of my knowledge of biomechanics and physiology and the psychology of change, let's say, right? I had kinesiology degrees, so like I wasn't awful, but I was also 22 years old, 23 years old. Like, I just did not have enough reps in the game to be that good. And yet, I was able to be, at a very, very young age, one of the most successful trainers in my city, in the city of Toronto, charged out at $97 an hour, which was the most at that point that I could charge, even though, you know, admittedly, there were trainers who were way better than me at the time. And the reason for that is, in addition to being a mediocre to just okay personal trainer, I also had attained mediocre to low-level skill sets in writing and in behavioral psychology. And so what a lot of people think is that success is actually linear growth, right? Or even exponential growth as you learn, you know, more about your thing. You know, 1 + 1 equals 2, but actually the way to make 1 + 1 = 10, which is obviously a simplification, but the way to make 1 + 1 = 10 is actually to appreciate the fact that you probably know enough about your thing right now to do a good enough job for the vast majority of your customers, and you would be better at systematically adding these complementary leapfrog skills to what you're doing. Let's go through what are the different leapfrog skills then? So the top 5 leapfrog skills that I lay out in the book are: number 1, business writing, right? Get to the point, hook the reader, tell the story, write simply, offer an actionable takeaway. Number 2 is behavioral psychology. Recognize, navigate, and take ethical advantage of the major cognitive biases. Number 3, conversation. Ask the types of questions that encourage others to talk about themselves. Number 4, sales. You get what you want by helping others get what they want. And then number 5 is wealth management. Make money with patience. Even a little bit of money is enough money to make meaningful money. And so any industry that you're in, I'm not saying that you should stop developing your own industry specific knowledge. You always should. But actually, what I think is over time, you should start to change the amount of professional development that you do with industry specific knowledge and start adding in these leapfrog skills. You know, year 1, when you're new to an industry, about 75% industry specific, about 25% leapfrog skills. Year 2, 50-50. Year 3, about 25% industry specific, 75% leapfrog skills. And then every year forward, about that 25-75 kind of breakdown. Now, every industry changes a little bit. Obviously, certain industries have different minimum requirements to like get success, but really, to be honest, not that much. And so why then do people tend to obsess about their own industry and perhaps develop themselves too much in one area and not enough in the other ones? I think the reason actually comes down into how easy it is to learn more about stuff that you already know about. You know, we trick ourselves, we deceive ourselves into thinking that we're actually doing something to better our careers, whereas really what we're doing is we're reading for pleasure, right? We are interested in what we are interested in. That's why we work in this specific field. If we already know a lot about a thing, it's easy, it's fun, it's pleasurable to actually learn more about something we already know, or not even learn more, but have what we're learning, what we're listening to, what we're reading, what we're consuming, reinforce things that we already know, perhaps in a new way. And so I'm not saying don't do this, but what I think that you need to do is I think that you need to differentiate. Hey, am I actually reading for pleasure, Or am I reading for professional development? Am I studying for pleasure or professional development? Most of the time, if you're experienced in your job and you're honest with yourself, what you're doing when you're learning more about your industry-specific expertise is actually for pleasure. Do you really need your 8th certification on nutrition when you only have 7 clients, for example? No, you should learn more about business and marketing development. Why don't you? Because it's uncomfortable, because it's unfamiliar, because it's hard. You don't know much about this stuff. You've never really learned much about this stuff. You're coming from behind. But here's the really cool thing about this theory is that you really have 2 paths that you can take as you pursue your career. If you're trending towards excellence, right? If you are ambitious, you really have 2 paths that you can take. Path number 1 is to really push forward and try to become the best in the world at what you do. Silo your efforts, right? Become the Andy Galpin, for example, with the Perform podcast. Like, Andy is phenomenal as a performance coach. He doesn't really care about the business stuff, but he is so obsessive about what he does that he's one of the best in the world. So you could try to be the best in the world at what you are, and you might get there. It's going to take a very long time. It's going to be very, very hard. I mean, ask any academic anywhere whether they feel like they are rightfully compensated for the amount of knowledge that they have. I think the answer that you will get is no, and all of these idiots who know less than me are actually making more money and getting more prestige and accolades. So there are exceptions, but it's very, very difficult. Regardless, that's one path. The second path, though, is to appreciate that you probably know enough about your thing right now, and to start to systematically gather these leapfrog skills. Now, the cool part about this is that by definition, you don't need a high level of information or knowledge or skill in any of these areas. And so what I've designed is a system called leapfrog learning, which is a 60-day process to gain, call it the 80-20 of the new skill set, a low to mediocre skill set in something new. You don't have to always be in one of these leapfrog learning type situations, but what I'll do is if there's something that I want to learn, I go through a 60-day obsessive period where I say my focus is to master wealth management in a just okay way. I want to learn enough about money so that I can understand how to budget and maximize my ability to navigate taxes and charge customers and pricing or whatever it is. And so what you do is you spend 60 days studying this thing, and then you go and teach it to somebody else, right? 60 days study, then you go and teach it to somebody else. That's leapfrog learning, step 1, step 2. And over time, you could start with those 5 leapfrog skills, but over time, what you do is you start to stack these skills atop one another, combined with your industry-specific expertise. I think about my career now, and I would consider myself to be a moderate to pretty good writer who has mediocre to low-level skills and knowledge bases in behavioral psychology, wealth management, marketing, copywriting, presentation. If you were to measure my abilities in any one of those things, I would be mediocre to just okay. But it's the combination of those things that has helped me rise above a lot of people in my industry over the years, and that'll continue to do. I mean, I'm not there yet, and I don't think I'm ever gonna be there yet. But the idea is, hey, you probably, if you're honest with yourself, know enough about your thing to get people results that's going to make them happy. To other people in your industry that are obsessed with your thing, sure, you might not impress them. Who cares? Your job is to solve the problem of your customers. Can you already solve the problem of your customers? If the answer is yes, and you don't have enough customers, or you don't have a business that is profitable enough, or you're not able to have the prestige that you need in your industry, or you are having trouble standing out online or on stages or with your writing or whatever it is, it's not the industry-specific knowledge that you need more of. It's combining the knowledge you already have with these other leapfrog skills, and you only need a mediocre to low level of them. And so it really doesn't take that much time, but here's the rub, here's the thing. You gotta focus, and that's the hard part. You gotta focus on one thing at a time. You've gotta say, for these 60 days, I'm going to build a low to medium knowledge base on this area that is unfamiliar and uncomfortable to me. When I did this with finance, with wealth management, the first thing that I did was I read an admittedly kind of dense book on what money is. I needed to understand even just basic terminology. I have a kinesiology degree. I never took a marketing course in my life in college and university. Then I went to work as a personal trainer. Everything has to be self-taught to a lot of us. And so I didn't even know the terms. I didn't know what credit was. I didn't know what debt was. I didn't understand how the tax systems work. I didn't know in Canada what a TFSA, a tax-free savings account, was, an RRSP, the difference between an RESP, for example. And so I read a book to learn the basic terminology of those things first, and that was hard. It's hard because it is so foreign to me. But you don't really need to do that once. And then I started to combine that with, okay, well, I'm making money. How do I make more money with my money? Okay, well, now I can become more profitable. Now I can solve these other problems. Now I have more time and space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the key. That's the secret to success that most others in your industry will never follow, that if you follow, you will immediately step ahead, is to admitting that what you know is probably already good enough to solve the problem of your customers. And what you should probably focus on in your professional development time are areas that are complementary to whatever it is that you do. And by the way, this is not just for entrepreneurs. This is for people who work in an industry as a job, as an employee as well. Because no matter what you do, this is how you become recession-proof. This is how you build resiliency in your career. Because your industry-specific knowledge, if your industry ceases to exist, which might be the case in some industries, or you lose your job or get an opportunity in another industry, you bring these leapfrog skills with you to immediately combine with a low to mediocre level that's actually relatively easy to attain in just about any core industry. You combine these other things with it, and all of a sudden now you have so much more resilience, and you can create so much more value to any employer or in an entrepreneurial venture. It's really quite cool.